ideally, I was looking for that one part, in a movie or something like that, that would just instantly break me away and put me into the arena where I could, pick and choose from some great projects. But it didn't happen that way. I don't know why I waited as long as I did, but about 7 years ago, I realized if I'm ever going to do this, I better do it now. My name is Don Most. People might remember me as Donny Most, where I played Ralph on the TV show Happy Days. That was back a long time ago, and I've been doing many, many things since then. Yes, it was Lehigh University, that's correct, which was a big engineering school. The reason I went there was it was the backup plan that my parents wanted, because they knew that having a career as an actor, singer, was a bit of a precarious enterprise. So they felt if I went to university and had something solid as a backup plan. But I knew from the time I was pretty young, 13, I was going to a school on weekends in New York City for singing and acting and all that. And I knew that's what I wanted to do. And I started working when I was pretty young. I was singing in a nightclub act up in the Catskill Mountains when I was 15. And then I started concentrating on acting. And I wound up getting a lot of, in New York, getting a lot of TV commercials, a lot of national commercials while I was in high school, and then while I was going to college, at Lehigh. So that's what I knew that's where my focus was and my passion and desire was. I made it through 3 years, and then I went out to Los Angeles for the summer after my junior year to try to make some networking and contacts for after graduation. And that's what got me out to LA. And then I never made it back to school because things started happening. I started getting work and then eventually got Happy Days. I was out in LA for the summer and I was able to get an agent and because of the work I had done in New York. And they sent me on some auditions, and I actually landed a few roles prior to Happy Days. I got a guest starring role in 3 other TV shows before Happy Days. But then I got the call from my agent that they were seeing people for a new show about the 50s. And Gary Marshall was going to be the executive producer. At the time, he had the TV show The Odd Couple on ABC on the air with Jack Klugman and Tony Randall. So I knew of Gary Marshall. And so I went in, as you mentioned, I had a series of auditions. The second one was with Gary and about 10 other people. Then they brought me in for a screen test. And I was auditioning for the role of Potsy. But then what happened was they called my agent and said, now he didn't get that part. Anson Williams doing that. But the executives loved his screen test and thought that he should be in the show. So we're creating the regular role for him. And it was a small part in the pilot script called, it was Ralph, guy who liked cars. That's about all they knew to tell me about him. But then they promised that I'd be in most of the episodes, that they could guarantee that and for the first season. And, they made a deal, which I actually turned down because I was much more interested in pursuing dramatic, not comedy. And I was being considered for a TV movie that was a very dramatic part that I really wanted to do. And I had a good chance of getting it. So we passed, my agent and I, on that Friday night when he called, we decided to pass on Happy Days. But then my agent happened to be playing basketball the next day at Gary Marshall's house. And Gary talked to him during a break in the game and I think convinced him that this was could be a good thing. And looked very good that it would get on the air and offered me more money. So he called me on Monday and he said, I think we should reconsider. And we did. And that's how I wound up doing Happy Days. If not for that basketball game, maybe not. It was a wonderful group of people. That's the thing I miss most. People say, "Oh, did you miss doing the show when you left?" Um, and I said, what I missed was working with the people, not doing the show. And because I'd done that character for 7 years. I actually only did 7 of the 11 seasons, and I left after the 7th season. And yes, that was the hard part because the cast was, we got along so well, professionally and off the set, personally, and as well as Gary Marshall was a great mentor, influence for us. Director Jerry Paris. That it was an amazing experience that I'm forever grateful for. After I left the show, one of the reasons was I knew that I was going to be up against, some real challenges in terms of breaking away from the character since it was such a big hit. And, we didn't have internet then or cable, so we had 50, 60 million people watching Tuesday night. And then, you're going to get typecast. Back then, especially more than today. So it was hard. That was a reason I left, though. I wanted to try to start chipping away at that and finding the right vehicle. Sort of, ideally, I was looking for that one part, in a movie or something like that, that would just instantly break me away and put me into the arena where I could, pick and choose from some great projects. But it didn't happen that way. I told my agent I didn't want to do another television show right now after I left. I said I want to try to do film. And it was almost impossible back then to go from a sitcom to film. It's not like that today, but back then it was. But I was 27 and decided this is what I wanted to try to do. Well, I told them that, and I went 6 months without I couldn't even get an audition to do for a film. They wouldn't let me even come in and read because, they thought of me as that character, as I pensive about, and it turned out to be absolutely the reality. So it was tough, but I just chipped away. I did some theater, and then I finally said, okay, I'm going to do some TV now. I'll pick, and I got some roles where I was able to do something a little different here, a little different there, and gradually built it up where I was doing more and more theater. And then eventually it even led to me, I started directing some theater and then directed several independent films. And then more acting roles started coming. And especially, it's really opened up in the last 5 to 10 years. I think because I'm older and, no longer, so there's more of a breakaway distance and time from Happy Days. And I fit other kinds of characters at this age. So I've been doing a lot of films in the last 5 to 10 years, and especially the last 2 years, two that I'm really proud of. A film called Lost Heart, which is on Amazon Prime, and it's a comedy drama. I play a local pastor in it. And then a film, Man's Best Friend, where I play an attorney defending a wounded vet. Pretty heavy film. A lot of interesting roles have been coming my way now, and I'm looking forward to like this whole new phase. At that time, when I started to direct, I did some theater first. I was kind of frustrated, this was back in the 90s, about the lack of, the kinds of projects that I wanted to do. That I wasn't getting, just weren't coming my way. So I had an opportunity to direct at this small theater in Los Angeles, so I took it. And it was a really good experience. And I knew at one point I'd want to direct, but I thought it would be later. But I decided to do it then because, I was feeling stymied. So from that experience, it went so well that I did a bunch of more plays and then started looking for scripts, film scripts that I could hopefully find a way to get made and that I could direct. And because of being an actor, it's very helpful for an actor who's directing, because you can talk to the actors in a way that, you speak that language and you understand the problems that, all the things that it entails for them to get their best performance out there. And so that was helpful. And also the fact that I'd by then worked with a lot of good directors. I learned a lot from them. Ron Howard, who directed me when he was trying to direct, and he asked me if I would do a film with him where we developed the story together and I would play the lead. So he was directing me before he really was a director. And then my first film that I did was with a great director. It was only his second film at the time, a man named Jonathan Demme, who went on to win Academy Awards. He directed Silence of the Lambs and Philadelphia and a host of other great films. So, I had a great training ground, and you absorb that, you assimilate that, I think. And Jerry Paris, our director on Happy Days, was a fabulous director, and Gary Marshall, who directed some of them too. So I think that was very helpful for me when I decided to do it. My first film was a movie called The Last Best Sunday, a very dramatic piece, two teenagers, and kind of a Romeo and Juliet kind of story, modern day. And then I wound up doing another film called Moolah as a director, which is a comedy drama, and called Harley's Hill as well, a family film. And I've got a bunch of projects in development right now that I'm hoping I can get, greenlit, financed, set up, whatever you want to call it, so that I'll be directing again soon, I hope. It is my first love, I like to say, because when I was first starting out, when I was 13, going to the school in New York City for acting and singing, I was really pursuing singing at that point. As a 13-year-old, 14-year-old, that's where my passion was really at the time. I enjoyed acting, but I wanted to do sort of the jazz standards and get up there and do what Sinatra had done and Bobby Darin I was a big fan of. And then I did do it when I was 15 years old in this nightclub act in the Catskill Mountains. But after that summer, I switched my focus to acting. But I knew it would come back into play at some point. I don't know why I waited as long as I did, but about 7 years ago, I realized if I'm ever going to do this, I better do it now. And I wasn't getting, younger. So I put together an act 7 years ago. I found a great musical director and found some great musicians in LA and tried doing a show at one of the jazz clubs here. And it went great. So people were shocked and surprised because they didn't know that side of me. And I wound up doing it more in more clubs, and then in New York, a bunch of jazz clubs, and then around the country, a little, some theaters and clubs. And then it led to me doing my CD 3 years ago called Mostly Swing. And it swings. It was a great big band, wonderful musicians from LA, some of the top jazz studio guys in town, and with singing all the great standards. And it, mostly swings, because there's a few ballads in there. My mom was a teenager and young adult during the swing era of the 40s. So she had a lot of those albums. So, Count Basie and, Duke Ellington, Glenn Miller. And then I saw a movie when I was 9 years old on TV called The Jolson Story, which was a biopic about the great Al Jolson. And, he was singing all those songs from the 20s and 30s. And I went out to his albums and would sing along to them. And then that I learned of a radio station in New York, WNEW. And at night there was a DJ named William B. Williams who would play all of the great standards, all the, Sinatra and Nat King Cole, Ella Fitzgerald, great jazz singers, and Joe Williams, who sang with the Count Basie Band, Dean Martin, of course. And I was a huge fan also of Sammy Davis Jr., Bobby Darin. I saw at the Copacabana when I was 18, and Bobby could sing the swing. He could swing as good as any of them and sing jazz and blues, anything, folk. Um, so those, and a lot of the female jazz singers I love, like I said, Ella Fitzgerald and Dinah Washington, and more recently, Diana Krall, who's a wonderful jazz pianist, vocalist, was has been an influence on me as well. So I would say those are the key ones for me. But then also in the 60s, some incredible music being done, after what the Beatles sort of brought in. And that's why I'm glad that we've incorporated some music from that era as well, not just the jazz standards. It's funny because it was a Facebook friend that saw some of my posts where I put some of my footage from some of the concerts I had done, the jazz stuff, the swing, and he, was very complimentary, and he said, I have a friend who's a great producer out of Nashville. I think you should meet him because I think you two could be good together. So he introduced us, and it just so happened that Tony was coming out to Los Angeles for an event. So we got together and had lunch and talked and hit it off. I really liked what Tony had to say, his ideas, his sense, and that's when we decided let's do a CD together. And and that's when he also expressed his idea. He thought it would be good to do it with a more contemporary jazz feel as opposed to the big band, since I'd done that, and I was certainly open and game for that, and liked the sound of it. Tony and I spoke at length about our song choices. When we talked, he thought we should do something a little different. We would still do some jazz standards, but not with a big band, a more contemporary jazz combo, that kind of setting. And maybe mixing in some songs from the 60s and 70s, which was other music I loved because I was a teenager and young adult during that time, and it was great music. When I mentioned "Ooh Baby," because I heard it somewhere, it was being played in a restaurant on their through their radio or whatever, and I went, "Oh my God, hadn't heard the song in a while," and I said, "This could be interesting to do it, in our setting." So I mentioned it to Tony. He liked the idea right away. He thought it was a great song. And then we started thinking about, well, how I started looking at other versions done and, getting ideas, and I'd send them to Tony, and he'd say, yeah, I like that. That's a good thing. We might be able to use something like that and something from here. So then when I got out, then he got with his guitar player, arranger, and they started working it out how they saw it based on some of the feedback I had given Tony of who I liked and which approach, and then they brought me in so that with the band, so that while they were laying the tracks down, they wanted me there to sing a scratch vocal, not a vocal that they would use, but one just so that the musicians could I'm doing, and I could feel what they're doing, and then it becomes more of a interaction and an organic kind of thing, and then it starts to take a life of its own, and that's kind of how it developed. It was originally done by Smokey Robinson and the Miracles back in 1965, a Motown hit, and we did it with a little bit. It still has an R&B feel, but it's also got a little jazz feel to it. It's a song called "Ooh Baby Baby," and I'm really happy with the way it came out. Great, and the response has been terrific so far. So I'm excited that it's being released there in the UK, and can't wait to hear more of the reaction. And hopefully it's good, because then I would love to come and tour there and perform, some of the swing and jazz and some of this other music as well. Well, I'm hoping, keep doing it. Not only, let's say, in the UK, but obviously get it going again here in the US. It's just been locked down, so I haven't been able to do any of it. But I think it's going to start opening. I just found out I'm going to be doing performing at a jazz festival here in California, and then hopefully more festivals, more performing arts centers. You know, we'll see where it can lead to. And I also still like playing even the smaller jazz clubs. I just really enjoy that. So hope to be doing that, and then more recording. We'll see. I'm Donny Most. You're on Live Wire, and you're about to listen to my new single, Ooh Baby Baby.